The red dust of Planet X9 was a fine powder that got into everything. It coated the boots of Kale and his partner as they walked toward the Discovery. For Kale, this dust was holy ground. For Hannah, it was just dirt. They called them Terrans, Kale said, his voice full of wonder. He was a historian, and for him, the old stories were everything. The legends say they were a race of fire and anger. They fought wars across the stars and finally burned themselves out. Hannah, who's a xenolinguist, was more practical. She brushed some red dust from her scanner. The legends also say they used rocks and metal for tools. They were not very advanced. They destroyed themselves because they were not smart. This was the way of the Signan Collective. Their society was built on logic and peace. For thousands of years, they had studied the stars and found no one like them. The only other life they ever found evidence of was the Terrans, and they were long gone. The Terrans were a lesson, a story to tell young Signans about what happens when you let emotion control you. But Kale did not believe the old stories. He believed the Terrans were something more. All his life, he had studied their broken cities and their strange, simple tools. He felt a connection to these ghosts of the past. Today, on this dead world, he thought he would finally find proof he was right. Their discovery was not like the others. Usually, Terran ruins were just that, ruins. Broken walls and rusted metal half buried in the dirt. But this was different. It was a perfect black cube, the size of a small mountain. Its sides were smooth and clean, with no cracks or marks. The red dust of the planet did not stick to it. It looked like it was built yesterday. The material is unknown, Hannah said, looking at her scanner. It is not stone or metal. Our tools cannot read it. It is like a hole in our data. Kale ran a hand over the black surface. It was cool and smooth, like polished glass. There were no doors, no windows, no way in. They built this to last forever, he whispered. This is not the work of a simple race. It took them 2 days to get inside. They had to use a powerful laser cutter, a tool that could slice through mountains to burn a small hole in one wall. The air that came out was clean, not stale like they expected. Inside, it was not a building full of rooms. It was one single, large chamber. The chamber was empty except for one thing. In the very center stood a pedestal. It was made of the same black material as the walls, but it glowed with a soft white light from within. It was simple, a plain square column that reached up to their chests. Kale and Hannah walked toward it slowly, their footsteps echoing in the silent room. Hannah pointed her scanner at the pedestal. There is a marking here. Just one word. The language is very old, a root form of the dialects we have found before. She worked on her tablet, her fingers moving fast. After a few minutes, she looked up, her face pale. It says one thing. It says, listen. Kale's heart beat fast. This was it. This was the answer to all his questions. Listen, he repeated. Listen to what? Hannah shook her head. Kale, this is not right. The legends say their technology was dangerous. This could be a trap. It could be a weapon that will activate if we touch it. We should call the council. We should wait for a full team. But Kale was not listening to her. He was looking at the pedestal, at the single word glowing softly. He had spent his whole life looking for the truth about the Terrans. He could not wait. He had to know. It is a message, Hannah, he said, his voice low and serious. A message left for someone. Maybe for us. He stepped closer to the pedestal. Kale, no. Hannah shouted, but it was too late. He reached out and placed his hand on the smooth, glowing surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the light from inside the pedestal grew very bright. It was not a hot light, but a cold, pure white light. It filled the room, and Kale and Hana had to cover their eyes. They felt no heat, no sound, no shaking. There was only a feeling of immense power, a silent wave that passed through them. Outside, on the surface of the red planet, something incredible happened. A silent pulse of white light shot out from the black cube. It traveled up into the sky, past the thin clouds, and into the darkness of space. It moved faster than anything should be able to move, faster than light, faster than thought. In a second, it was gone from their star system. On the Cygnon homeworld, the leaders of the collective watched the event on their main screen. They saw the pulse of energy leave planet X9. The room was silent, and then it filled with angry voices. "He has done it," said one of the elders, his voice shaking with fear. "Kale, the fool! He has woken the beast." The old legends spoke of a final weapon, a doomsday device the Terrans built before they vanished. The Council believed Kale had just activated it. They imagined a wave of destruction that would soon spread across the galaxy, a fire that would consume them all. They sent a message to Kale's ship, ordering him to explain what he had done. But they were already preparing for the worst. They thought their long, peaceful era was over. Back inside the black cube, the light faded. The pedestal was dark and silent again. Kale stood there, his hand still resting on it, his face a mix of fear and awe. Hana was already at her tablet, her face a mask of concentration. The Council's angry shouts were coming through their communication device, but she ignored them. "Kale," she said, her voice quiet but firm. It was not a weapon. He turned to look at her. "What? But the energy? The signal?" "It was a signal, yes," Hana said, turning the tablet for him to see. The screen was filled with lines of complex math and star charts. But it was not a bomb. It was a key, a message made of pure math. It is not a random broadcast that will spread out and destroy things. It is a targeted message. It was sent to one specific place. Kale looked at the screen, trying to understand. Where? Where was it sent? Hana zoomed out on the star chart. She pointed to a vast, empty area between galaxies. A place of absolute nothingness, a void so large it took weeks for Cygnon light to cross it. The signal was aimed directly at the center of that void. "It was sent there," she said softly, "to a place where there is nothing." The Terrans did not leave a weapon behind, Kale. They left a phone. And you just made a call. The fear on the Cygnon homeworld was a cold, quiet thing. For 3 days, the leaders of the collective waited. They watched the empty space where the signal from X9 had disappeared. They imagined ancient weapons waking up, a fire from the past coming to burn their perfect, peaceful society. Kale and Hana were on their ship, held under guard, listening to the Council's angry debates. They were treated not as scientists, but as fools who had ended the world. Then, something happened. Near the planet X9, the blackness of space changed. It did not tear open with a loud sound or a bright flash. It was more like a hole being quietly punched in the fabric of reality. A piece of the sky simply went black, a blackness that was deeper than the space around it. Then, from that hole, a ship began to appear. It did not fly out. It unfolded into existence, as if a giant, invisible hand was drawing it onto the canvas of the stars. The ship was impossible. It was a city made of metal, a dark geometric shape that was larger than any moon in the Cygnon system. The Cygnon fleet, which had been waiting for a fight, looked like small, shiny toys next to it. The human ship did not shine or glow. Its dark metal seemed to drink the light from the nearby star, making it look like a piece of the night sky had come to life. On the bridge of the lead Cygnon ship, Kale and Hana watched in silent awe. This was not the weapon of a primitive race. This was the work of gods. The Cygnon commander, a brave officer named Jin, tried to follow the rules. He sent a standard greeting, a message of peace on all known frequencies. "Unknown vessel," his voice said across the void. "You have entered Signan space. State your purpose." The answer came back instantly, not in a strange alien language, but in perfect, clear Signan. The voice was calm, female, and held no emotion. "We are here. Stand by. We mean you no harm, unless you are the source of the silence." The word silence hung in the air on the Signan bridge. No one knew what it meant. It was a strange, chilling word. Jin looked at Kale, who could only shake his head. The legends of the Terrans said nothing about his silence. They spoke only of war and fire. Before Jin could answer, a small shuttle detached from the massive dark ship. It was a simple, smooth craft that moved with a grace that defied physics. It did not fly in a straight line. It seemed to bend the space between itself and the Signan station, arriving in seconds. The Signan security teams aimed their weapons, their hands shaking, but the shuttle simply docked with a soft, gentle click. A door opened, and two beings stepped out. They were not monsters. They were not the savage, feral creatures from the legends. They were Terrans, humans. They were tall, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that were strangely expressive. The one in front was a woman with dark hair tied back tightly. Her eyes were a clear blue, and they held a deep, ancient tiredness. She wore a simple, dark uniform with no medals or marks of rank. Behind her stood a man, taller and with a friendly face, but his eyes held the same look of a person who has seen too much. The woman looked at the nervous Signan guards and gave a small, tired smile. "I am Captain Eva Rostova," she said, her voice the same calm, clear Signan from the ship. "This is my executive officer, Commander Ben Carter. We are here to speak with your leaders." The meeting was held in the main council chamber. The Signan leaders sat in their high chairs, looking down at the 2 humans. Ava and Ben stood in the center, calm and still, surrounded by armed guards. The head counselor, an old Signan named Jin, spoke first. His voice was hard. "You claim to be Terrans. The legends say you destroyed yourselves. We demand to know who you are and what you want." Eva looked at him, her expression unchanged. "We are humans," she said simply. "And the legends are wrong. We did not destroy ourselves. We left." She paused, letting her words sink in. The council members started to talk among themselves, their voices filled with disbelief. "Leave? How can an entire race just leave?" "Long ago," Ava continued, her voice cutting through the noise, "we faced a threat. A force that exists to end all things. It does not conquer. It does not kill. It erases. It consumes matter, energy, and even information. It leaves nothing behind. We called it the silence." A cold fear filled the room. Hannah, who was standing to the side, felt a chill go down her spine. The word from the message. "The silence. This force hunted us," Iva said. "We fought a war for 1,000 years, and we were losing. So we made a choice. We built a fleet of ships and left this galaxy. We went into the great void between galaxies to hide, to build, and to prepare. We hoped that by the time we returned, the silence would be gone, or that the younger races like you would have time to grow strong enough to face it." She looked directly at Kale. "We left beacons behind. Messages in a bottle, waiting for a signal that the silence had returned. The beacon your team found on X9 was one of them. You did not activate a weapon. You sent a call for help." The Signan leaders were silent. Their entire history, their understanding of the universe, was falling apart. The Terrans were not a lesson in failure. They were heroes who had sacrificed everything. Jin finally found his voice. "That ship. Your ship. It is a weapon of unimaginable power. You could crush our worlds without effort. How can we trust you? Ava's face finally showed a hint of sadness. Our ships are not weapons of conquest, Counselor Jin. They are arcs. They are fortresses. They are the last homes of our people, holding the last of our art, our history, our families. We have spent 20,000 years running and hiding. We did not come back to rule. We came back because the silence has found this galaxy, and we are the only thing that stands between it and you. She looked around the room at the shocked faces of the Signans. Your legends are over. The war is about to begin. The news of the humans' return spread through the Signan collective like a quiet storm. On every world, in every city, people stopped what they were doing to watch the images of the giant dark ship. The story that the Terrans were not dead, but had returned, was too big to believe. For a society that valued logic above all else, this was a moment of pure chaos. The old legends were lies. The ghosts of the past were standing at their door. The Signan Council was in an uproar. The meeting room was loud with arguments. Some counselors were terrified, believing Ava's story about the silence. Others were angry, thinking the humans were liars who had come to take their worlds. The leader of this group was Counselor Jin. He was an old, proud Signan who had dedicated his life to the peace and stability of the collective. He saw the humans' power not as a shield, but as a threat. They tell a nice story, Jin said, his voice cutting through the noise. A story of a great enemy and heroic humans. But it is just that, a story. They have a ship that can destroy our entire fleet without trying. They say they are our friends, but conquerors always say they come in peace. Kale and Hana stood at the side of the room, watching the debate. Kale felt a frustration building inside him. He had spent his life proving the Terrans were more than the legend said. Now that he was right, no one wanted to believe it. They are not conquerors, he said, stepping forward. I have studied them. Their ship, the Odyssey, is a fortress, yes, but it is also a home. They are not soldiers. They are survivors. Jin laughed, a cold, sharp sound. You are a historian, young Kale. You read old stones. I deal with the real world. And in the real world, power is used to take. I do not trust them. He turned to Ava, who stood calmly in the center of the room, listening to everything. You ask us to trust you, to join your war, but you give us nothing but your words. We need proof. Proof that this silence is real, and that you are truly here to help us. Eva looked at Ben, who gave a small, almost invisible nod. She then turned back to Jin. You are right to be careful, she said, her voice even. Trust is not given. It is earned. We will give you your proof. She walked to a large star map on the wall. She pointed to a small star system on the edge of Signan space. This is the Ethel system. It has a small colony on its fourth moon. For the last month, your scientists have been watching a strange object near that moon. You think it is a new type of star or a cloud of space dust. You are wrong. Hana, who had been listening intently, stepped forward. She is right, Hana said, looking at her data tablet. The object's energy readings are not natural. They are wrong. They do not follow any laws of physics we know. That object, Eva continued, is a probe from the silence. A scout. It is watching your colony, learning about you. Soon, the main force will come for it. We will stop it. We will show you what we are fighting. The council agreed to the demonstration. A small Signan warship was sent to the Ethel system to watch from a safe distance. Kale and Hana were allowed to go on the bridge, standing next to the ship's nervous captain. They watched the main screen, which showed the image of the human fighter, a small, sleek craft, flying toward the strange object. The silence probe was a terrifying thing to see. It was not a ship. It was a living, shifting cloud of blackness. It had no fixed shape. It looked like a hole in reality, a mistake that made the eyes hurt to look at. It seemed to absorb the light from the nearby star, making the space around it darker. The Signan captain, following his orders, fired a warning shot. A bright laser beam shot from his ship and hit the probe. The laser did not bounce off or explode. It was simply gone. The probe absorbed the energy without any effect. "It is not working," the captain whispered, his voice shaking. "Our weapons are useless." Then the human fighter moved. It did not fire a laser or a missile. It flew close to the probe and then stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a field of quiet blue light spread out from the small fighter. It was not an explosion. It was a gentle wave that washed over the black cloud. The effect was impossible. The probe did not burn or break apart. It began to fade. It was like watching a drawing being erased. The dark shape became lighter, the edges became soft, and then, in a silent instant, it was gone. It did not leave behind any dust or debris. It just vanished from existence. Where the terrifying probe had been, there was now only the empty, black space of the void. On the bridge of the Signan ship, there was complete silence. Everyone stared at the screen, their minds unable to understand what they had just seen. Cale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's cold air. This was not power. This was something else. It was control over the very rules of the universe. The human fighter's voice came over the communicator. It was Commander Ben Carter. "Threat neutralized," he said calmly, as if he had just swatted a fly. "The colony is safe." Back in the council chamber, the leaders watched the same event on their main screen. When the probe vanished, Jin sank back into his chair, his face pale and his old pride gone. He looked at Ava, who was watching the screen with a sad, tired expression. He finally understood. The humans were not there to conquer the Signans. They were there to fight a war on a level the Signans could not even imagine. The legend of the primitive, self-destructive Terrans was not just wrong. It was a joke. The truth was so much bigger and so much more terrifying. The Signans were not alone in the galaxy. They had just been living under the protection of a god they thought was a ghost. The silence in the Signan council chamber was broken by the sound of Jin's breathing. It was slow and heavy, the sound of a man whose world had been rebuilt and broken in the same hour. He looked at Ava, not with anger or fear, but with a deep, profound respect. The old legend of the Terrans was dead, and in its place was a truth so much larger and more terrible. The Signans were children living in a garden they did not know was protected by a wall of giants. An official treaty was signed that day. It was a simple agreement of mutual protection. The Signan Collective would offer its resources, its worlds, and its people to the cause. The humans would offer their ships and their power. Cale and Hana were asked to be the first official liaisons to live on the human ship, the Odyssey, and help the two species learn to work together. Life on the Odyssey was strange. The ship was a city in space, but it felt quiet and sad. The hallways were clean and the lights were soft, but there was a feeling of great age and tiredness in the air. The humans they met were not like the proud warriors from the stories. They were calm, quiet, and their eyes held a deep sadness, as if they were carrying the weight of all the years they had been away from home. Cale spent most of his time with Commander Ben Carter. Ben was the executive officer, and he was in charge of the day-to-day work on the ship. He had a friendly face and a quick smile, but Cale could see the same tiredness in his eyes. One day, they were walking through a large garden inside the ship. It was a perfect copy of a forest from a planet called Earth, a world Cale had only read about in old files. "We have been fighting for so long," Ben said, running his hand over the leaf of a tree. "Most of the people on this ship were born in the void between galaxies." They have never seen a real sun, only the lights on this ship. Earth is a memory, a story we tell our children. Why do you keep fighting? Kale asked. You could have stayed hidden. You could have been safe. Ben stopped walking and looked at Kale. Because the silence does not stop. If we let it consume this galaxy, it would eventually find us again. We are not just fighting for you. We are fighting for the idea of a future. For the chance that one day, our children's children can see a real sunrise. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. Also, we made a promise. A long time ago, we promised to protect the younger races. We do not break our promises. Kale began to see the humans not as gods or monsters, but as guardians. They were a people who had given up everything, their home, their peace, their future, to hold back a tide of darkness. His academic curiosity turned into a deep respect for their strength and their sacrifice. Hannah worked with Captain Eva Rostova, translating old human data and helping to plan strategy. She learned that the humans' technology was not just about power, but about understanding the universe in a way the Signans could not. They did not just break the laws of physics. They wrote new ones. The peace did not last. A month after the treaty was signed, the alarm sounded on the bridge of the Odyssey. A red light flashed, and a calm voice spoke over the ship's speakers. Alert! The silence has entered Signan space. Target, Cygnus Prime. On the main screen, Kale saw a map of their home system. A large, black mass was moving toward their central world, the heart of the Signan Collective. It was not one ship, but a fleet of them, a swarm of terrifying, shifting black clouds like the one they had seen at Ethel. The Signan fleet, brave and proud, moved to meet them. Kale watched the battle with a cold fear in his heart. The Signan ships fired their lasers and missiles, but the weapons were useless against the silence. The black ships simply absorbed the energy, moving through the Signan fleet like ghosts. One by one, the Signan ships vanished. They did not explode. They were just erased, gone from existence in a silent instant. It was a slaughter. The Signan home world was defenseless. Hope was dying. Then, a new sound came from the ship's speakers. It was Ava's voice, calm and steady. All human ships, engage. Protect Cygnus Prime. Around the Odyssey, space began to change. Holes opened in the blackness, and from each one, another city-sized human battleship unfolded into reality. There were dozens of them, a fleet of silent, dark giants appearing out of nowhere. They moved not like ships, but like forces of nature, positioning themselves between the silence and the Signan home world. The battle that followed was not like anything Kale had ever imagined. It was a symphony of destruction, conducted by the humans. One human ship did not fire a weapon. It projected a field of light that made a group of the Silence's ships move very, very fast. In the time it took Kale to blink, the enemy ships aged millions of years. Their metal skins turned to rust and then to dust, and they crumbled into nothing. Another ship created a powerful pull, like a whirlpool in space. The enemy ships were caught in the pull and torn apart. Their strange shapes pulled into long, thin lines before they vanished. The Odyssey joined the fight. Eva gave a quiet order. Deploy the reality anchor. A beam of pure white light shot from the Odyssey and hit a large group of the Silence's ships. The black, ghost-like ships suddenly became solid. They changed from shifting clouds to real physical objects made of a dark, brittle metal. Now that they were real, they could be hurt. The Odyssey fired a single, simple missile. It hit one of the now solid ships, and the ship shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, like glass. The other ships broke apart under the fire of the human fleet. The humans were winning. They were pushing the Silence back, erasing the enemy fleet with their strange, powerful science. But then, a scream came over the communication channel. It was from another human ship, the Icarus. "We are hit." It is inside us. We can't. The voice cut off. On the main screen, Kale watched as the Icarus, a ship as large as a city, was consumed by a single, massive cloud of the silence. The dark metal of the human ship bent and twisted, and then it vanished. It was gone. The humans were powerful, but they were not invincible. They could bleed. They could die. The war was real, and it had a cost. As the last of the Silence's ships vanished, a quiet sadness fell over the bridge of the Odyssey. They had saved the Cygnans, but they had lost one of their own, and with it, thousands of souls. The silence that followed the battle was heavier than the silence of space itself. On the bridge of the Odyssey, no one celebrated. They had won, but the loss of the Icarus was a wound in the heart of the fleet. Every human on the ship felt it, a shared pain that went deeper than words. For the Cygnans, watching from their home world, it was a moment of shocking clarity. They saw the humans not as invincible gods, but as brave mortal beings who had bled and died to protect them. In the weeks that followed, a new legend began to grow across the Cygnan worlds. It was a legend not of ancient ghosts, but of living heroes. Statues of Captain Eva Rostova and the Odyssey were carved from white stone and placed in the main squares of every city. Poets wrote verses about the guardians from the void, who fought a war of reality against the darkness. Children played with toy models of the human battleships, pretending to be the brave commanders who saved their homes. The old story of the self-destructive Terrans was forgotten, replaced by a powerful living truth. Humanity was no longer a myth of the past. They were the saviors of the present. Kale and Hannah stood with Eva and Ben on the bridge of the Odyssey, looking at a large star map. The map showed the Cygnan home system, now safe. But it also showed red dots spreading through the galaxy like a disease. These were the known locations of the Silence. We mourn the Icarus, Eva said, her voice quiet but strong. But their sacrifice was not in vain. They bought you time. They bought all of us time. She looked at Kale and Hannah. Now, we must use that time wisely. Hannah looked at the map, her mind racing. The Silence is spreading. They're not just attacking at the edges anymore. They are moving toward the center of the galaxy. They are looking for something, Ben added, his usual friendly smile gone. Or someone. We do not know why they choose certain targets, but we know they will not stop. Ava touched a control panel, and the star map changed. It now showed the human fleet, a cluster of dark dots, and the Cygnan fleet, a cluster of bright ones. For 20,000 years, we have fought this war alone. We have run, we have hidden, and we have survived. But we cannot win alone. We need allies. We need friends. She turned to face them fully. Our ships are arcs. They hold the last of our people, the last of our culture, the last of our memories from a world called Earth. Every ship we lose is a library that burns forever. We cannot afford to lose this war. But now, we do not have to. Kale felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He was no longer just a historian studying the past. He was a part of the future. What can we do? He asked. Our technology is simple compared to yours. Simple is not weak, Ava said with a rare small smile. And we will not ask you to fight a war you cannot win. We will share our technology with you. Not our most advanced science, but the tools from our earlier wars. We will give you new shields, new engines, and new weapons. They will make your ships 1,000 times more powerful. You will be able to protect your own worlds, to handle the smaller threats. This will free our fleet to focus on the main force of the Silence. It was an incredible offer. The humans were willing to share their secrets, to empower a younger race, all for the sake of a shared future. The alliance was no longer just a treaty. It was a true partnership, forged in the fire of battle and sealed with the trust of friends. The work began immediately. Human engineers and scientists worked side by side with Cygnans. Kale and Hannah were the bridges between the two cultures, translating not just words but ideas. The Cygnans were fast learners, and soon their shipyards were buzzing with new activity. Their sleek, shiny ships were being refitted with human technology, becoming stronger and faster than ever before. A month later, the combined fleet was ready. It was a beautiful and strange sight. The massive dark human battleships moved alongside the newly upgraded Cygnan cruisers, which now glowed with a faint blue light from their new human-made shields. It was a symbol of two very different races coming together to face a common enemy. Kale stood on the bridge of the Odyssey one last time before they left. He looked around at the diverse crew. Humans, Cygnans, and even a few other races who had joined their cause after hearing the story of the battle at Cygnus Prime. They were all working together, their different skills and minds united by a single goal. Eva stood next to him, looking out at the fleet through the large window. "Are you ready, Kale?" she asked. Kale looked at the star map, at the deep, dark space they were about to enter. It was the heart of the Silence's territory, a place from which no ship had ever returned. He was not afraid. He was with his friends, and he was fighting for a future worth saving. He thought about the old legends, the stories he used to read about the Terrans. They were seen as a cautionary tale, a race of fools who destroyed themselves. Now, he knew the truth. They were a race of survivors, of guardians, of heroes. They had left the galaxy to protect it, and they had returned to save it. The old legend was of a race called Terrans, who vanished into the past. The new legend, Kale knew, was of a race called humanity, a storm that had arrived from the void to protect the future. And he was a part of it. The old story was over. The new one was just beginning.